I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, looking ahead. New developments in the debt ceiling package as it heads towards a crucial vote on Capitol Hill. Speaking out, what two Major League Baseball players are saying about a recent decision by the Los Angeles Dodgers. Ruthless attacks. A closer look at the recent violence towards the clergy in Mexico. And proclaiming the gospel. Pope Francis honors a Jesuit missionary for his work in China. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of the Visitation. Our top story tonight, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy guarantees the country will not go into default and says that he has the votes to pass the Fiscal Responsibility Act tonight.
Today, the American people are going to win. We're going to pass the largest cut in American history. It's just a small step putting us on the right track. After today, I'm going to put a commission together to look at the entire budget.
The Speaker says the debt is too large and needs a bipartisan commission to look at long-term solutions. But members of the Republican-backed Freedom Caucus continue to say they will vote against the measure, calling it a sellout to the American people. To muster a 218-vote majority to push the bill through the House, congressional leaders must gain the support of enough Democrats to make up for a substantial number of GOP defections. A final vote is expected tonight. Well, after reaching a deal on the nation's debt ceiling, President Joe Biden now turns his attention to another concern: the weather. Tomorrow, hurricane season officially begins. Just 8 months ago, Category 5 Hurricane Ian slammed into the southwest Florida area, claiming well over 100 lives and causing billions of dollars in damage. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
A White House official says President Joe Biden wants to make sure there are response plans for extreme weather events. The administration says the bipartisan infrastructure law can help by providing money to combat wildfires and repair roads needed to get to emergencies. Weather worries. President Joe Biden meets with advisors about the upcoming hurricane season.
And last year, hurricanes and other extreme weather events here in the United States caused over $165 billion in damages.
The government wants to make sure Americans are prepared for severe weather. Wildfires also present a problem. Smoke is currently drifting into the U.S. from Canada.
We're also harnessing new tools like advanced satellite technology that's going to help get better at predicting where wildfires and storms are going, so that we can better position our resources ahead of time to respond.
And in the White House briefing room, questions about the war in Ukraine. The Biden administration does not want it to escalate.
I think we can all agree that a war that escalates beyond that actually does suck in the West and NATO and the United States, is not only not good for our national security interest, it is not good for the Ukrainian people. It's not good for the people all across Europe. It's certainly not good for the Russian people.
Also, North Korea's attempt to put its first spy satellite into space fails. South Korea and Japan briefly urged residents to take shelter. The White House calls the launch a brazen violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. And heating up, the presidential campaign trail, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis pushing back against former President Donald Trump and President Biden.
I am going to counterpunch. I'm going to fight back on it. I'm going to focus my fire on Biden, and I think he should do the same. He gives Biden a free pass. I'm focusing on Biden. That's my focus.
And new reports say former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie plans to enter the race for the White House next week. President Biden now traveling to Colorado, where he'll address Air Force Academy graduates tomorrow, while First Lady Jill Biden begins an overseas trip to Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, and Portugal. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, also at today's White House briefing, correspondent Owen Jensen was able to ask about the Vatican's attempt to broker a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia.
Pope Francis, as you know, has put together a peace mission to try to end the war in Ukraine. Simply, does the White House believe the Vatican can help achieve peace there?
We would welcome any and all proposals to try to end this war as quickly and as diplomatically as possible. But as I said earlier, any proposal, if it's going to be seen as credible and if it's going to be sustainable or enforceable, it's got to be supported by President Zelensky. Now, President Zelensky has put forward his own 10-point plan. for a just peace. We support that effort. We support that proposal, and we're working closely with his team to see if that can't be operationalized and move forward.
Meantime, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, now before Congress, does not include any cuts to Social Security. But if lawmakers do not do something soon, Social Security benefits would be automatically cut by 24% in about 10 years. One Louisiana senator is making it his goal to save it before it's too late. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric.
Well, good evening, Tracy. You know, Senator Bill Cassidy is a medical doctor, but worries that seniors could be left out in the cold when Social Security cuts are made. Let's face it, we could all be affected by this. Almost every American age 65 or higher receives some sort of Social Security benefits. Now, Senator Cassidy's plan is to have an independently run investment fund.
We take $1.5 trillion and we put it into the economy, and we allow that to grow, whether it's the stock market or real estate or you name it. And just like a teacher's pension fund, you put the money there, you allow it to grow over time, and that helps bail out Social Security.
He's even taking his message to the streets of Washington, D.C. with a video he named Bill on the Hill.
What would you think about a plan like that?
Well, that'd be a great idea.
Oh, I have goosebumps.
Like, why not?
Why not?
Makes sense, doesn't it? It's probably what your private pension fund does.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Republican Senator Kevin Cramer backs Senator Cassidy's efforts. He tells me doing nothing is not the answer.
I applaud him for it, quite honestly, and we need to do something. This idea that we can just keep lying to seniors and say, don't worry, if we do nothing, you're going to be fine. The reality is Social Security Trust Fund is going to be insolvent within about less than a decade.
And how does his plan pay for it? Senator Cassidy tells me it starts with presidential leadership to identify funding options.
We can borrow the money, we can raise the taxes, we can cut spending elsewhere, we can somehow sell off governmental assets to put the dollars in there.
Democrats are touting their own efforts called the Social Security 2100 Act.
Democrats are here not just to protect and preserve Social Security from cuts, but to expand it. Our bill will provide across-the-board increases for all recipients of Social Security. Our bill ensures that no senior can retire into poverty.
The Democrats' plan does offer a 2% increase in Social Security benefits. Now, its pay-fors include taxing those incomes of $400,000 or more and closing tax loopholes for the rich. Lawmakers say that Social Security reform is on their radar. But on a side note, we do want to also let you know that Republican Congressman Chris Stewart of Utah does plan to resign this year due to some health concerns with his wife, now dropping the majority of Republicans to only 8 seats once that is done. I'll keep you updated. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Several Major League Baseball players are speaking out against the decision by the Los Angeles Dodgers to honor a transgender group that mocks the Catholic faith. Dodgers pitcher Blake Trinan says the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence openly mock Jesus Christ, the cornerstone of his faith. He also says fans do not want to deal with politics while attending sporting events. Trevor Williams, a pitcher for the Washington Nationals, is also speaking out. Williams, a Catholic, released a statement saying in part, quote, creating an environment in which one group feels celebrated and honored at the expense of another is counterproductive and wrong. Well, as we reported last week, a ninth Catholic priest has been shot and killed in Mexico in just the past 4 years. The murder followed an attack on the Archbishop of Durango in northern Mexico after Mass last week. The Mexican Bishops' Conference is responding, saying in part, quote, it is a painful reminder of the serious situation that we face as a society in which the presence of organized crime and impunity continue threatening the lives and safety of so many. We go now to David Ramos, editor-in-chief of Aussie Prensa, who has been following this story. David, great to be with you tonight. First off, can you talk to us more about the priest that was murdered last week in Capacho, Mexico? And do we have any updates? Have there been any arrests?
Well, he was a pastoral priest. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me here. Well, this priest is, as many others here in Mexico, here in Latin America, a good priest who's serving the lay people. He was going to celebrate the Mass when he was killed. As far as we know, until now, the authorities doesn't have a clue about what has happened, who has killed him, and they are saying they're looking for the murderer. But as far as we know, the experience says in Mexico that probably we won't have a person convicted for this crime. It's what has happened with the last 8 priests killed in these last 4 years, and it's been what's going on, what is happening with almost every single priest and even cardinals that's being murdered in Mexico in these years.
It's so shocking and sad. David, why do police say his killing resembles such crimes by the drug cartels?
Yeah, it's because the modus operandi, the way it's being killed, probably getting in the way of this priest when he was driving and stopping him and shooting at the car is the way that the cartels, the organized crime works here. But you can never tell. You could think that this looks like the murder of the 2 Jesuits last year when they were murdered even inside a church. It was related, or that's what the authorities said, it was related with organized crime, with the cartels in Mexico. But even in that case, last year, we don't have a full story about that because authorities never captured the supposed author of this crime, and the supposed author was found dead, but was found murdered himself. So we at the Catholic Church wouldn't trust that much the authorities to give us a clear answer of what has happened in this case, as in many other cases of murder, of aggression, of violence against Catholic priests and Catholic laity.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I mean, what is the government doing about this, and how are they responding to these murders of these priests, if at all?
Well, probably what we would remember is that we just 30 years has passed since Cardinal Posadas, then Archbishop of Guadalajara, was murdered. And 30 years after that, we still don't know what has happened. The authorities don't have a clear answer of who ordered the murder, who murdered the cardinal. So if you can kill in Mexico a cardinal, then you can kill whoever in the Catholic Church. You can kill a bishop, you can kill a priest, and obviously you can kill any Mexican citizen walking around, and there will be, as we can see, no consequence.
It really is unbelievable. We're almost out of time, but one thing I do want to touch on is, we do know that Mexico has a really high murder rate overall. David, can you give us a sense of what it's like there, on the ground in Mexico, and is this impacting pilgrims who go to holy sites like Our Lady of Guadalupe?
Well, Mexican people, Mexican Catholics, we could say that there's this kind of resignation of what's going on. You have to live. You have to live in this society. You have to go to work. You have to go to mass. You have to live. So most people just keeps going. But yeah, this is a feeling of loneliness, of having no authority, because as I tell you, if a lay Catholic thinks, hey, they just murdered another priest, the 9th priest in this year. So, and if that case doesn't get solved, what's going on about me? And this is a clear signal that the criminals send. We can kill whoever we want, and we won't pay any consequence about that, because the authorities are going to do nothing against us. And that's the feeling that the people get of this kind of crimes. And I think that it's the message the cartels, the organized crime is sending to the Mexican people. No one can get away from us.
It's very concerning, and we're praying for all of you down there in Mexico. David, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. God bless.
God bless.
We have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including social media and substances, what parents need to know to keep their kids safe online and at home. And Pope Francis honors a Jesuit missionary for his work in China. girl in Australia recently lost her life after participating in a deadly social media trend on TikTok called chroming. It's when kids inhale harmful chemicals such as nail polish removers, deodorants, and hairspray with the intent to get high. But chroming isn't the only concern on social media when it comes to kids and substances. In fact, according to the DEA, drug traffickers are now advertising on nearly all social media platforms and using code words and emojis as a way to elude parents and law enforcement. Here now to talk with us about this and more is Leslie Kimball, Executive Director at responsibility.org. Leslie, great to be with you today. A lot to talk about, but first, I want to start off with social media and the dangers it poses for children when it comes to substances, whether it's the illegal purchase of drugs or the glorification of use. Your thoughts and what can parents do?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. I'm here with responsibility.org, which is funded by distillers. We fight drunk driving and underage drinking. And we realize that conversations about these risky behaviors don't happen in a silo. So parents don't talk about underage drinking one night, cannabis the next, drugs the next. It's typically a conversation about responsibility. And that's something that we want parents to do is double down, tell their children their values, and make sure that they understand ways to say no and role play those conversations. That's what parents can do in their households.
Yeah, Leslie, and let's talk a little bit more about that. I mean, what should parents be looking for? I mean, what are some of the signs that maybe their children are using or abusing substances, whether it's alcohol or drugs?
Yeah, summertime is upon us. Kids are home, they have more free time. If a kid is in their room quite a bit alone, that's an opportunity for a kid, a mom or dad or parent, loved one, to say, hey, let's go get some ice cream. Let's go for a walk around the block. Let's grill out. Let's make dinner together. Engaging with your kids is the first and foremost priority that you should do to check in on them. And just ways to follow conversations that are happening maybe on the radio, maybe on the news, maybe a rumor you've heard in your neighborhood. Giving parents and parents talking to their kids about their values and risky behaviors is critical this time of year.
Yeah, and I know, the drug being used the most now by adolescents is actually cannabis, or marijuana. In fact, according to studies, between 2000 and 2020, teen usage of that drug skyrocketed by a whopping 245%. That's extremely concerning. Leslie, what do you think is going on here? What do you think is behind that huge increase?
We sometimes think that parents just may not know how to have these conversations or what their kids are doing. So again, talking with your kids about their behaviors, what they're up to, maybe what their friends are up to, that's top of mind and critical. Responsibility.org has a program called Ask, Listen, Learn that's been around for over 20 years. Our studies and research show that the more parents talk to their kids about underage drinking, the more underage drinking goes down. The same is true about cannabis. We have a section on our website, asklistenlearn.com, that does talk through a role play that a parent can have with their kid and really educates both parents and kids about what happens to a kid's body if they're drinking underage or using cannabis underage.
Yeah, Leslie, on the flip side, I know the alcohol consumption has dropped dramatically in teens, which is great. However, still a concern. And you talk about talking. How soon is too soon to have these talks with your children?
The moment a kid asks a mom, dad, caregiver, what's in that drink, if they are happening to be having an alcoholic beverage, maybe at home, maybe out in public, talking to their kids about what is in that at an age-appropriate way is when you start that conversation. That product may not be for a kid. It may not be for a middle schooler or a high schooler or even a young college kid. And the parent really does need to have that conversation. Even if that parent thinks the kid is not listening, those kids are listening to the parents. Parents are the leading influence over a kid's decision to drink or not to drink or do some of these other risky behaviors.
Yeah, Leslie, we're almost out of time, 30 seconds or so, but how do you start that conversation? It can be really hard, especially when you have teenagers who maybe don't really want to talk to you at all at times.
They may act like they don't want to talk to you, but they do. In the car, if you hear something on the radio, again, take them out for an ice cream. You may want one too. It does not need to be a hard or difficult conversation. It can be very, very natural. It's just telling them, I love you. I want you to have a successful future. I believe in you. I don't want you to do these following things for the following reasons. That's what parents should do.
All right. Well, Leslie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, a week of reconciliation, how the Australian Embassy is shining a light on the contributions of the Indigenous people. Plus, the Vatican honors the Blessed Virgin Mary as the month dedicated to her comes to a close. The Archdiocese of St. Louis will now have 44 fewer parishes. Archbishop Mitchell Rosansky announced the decision over the weekend, saying the reduction is due to a lack of priests and shrinking mass attendance. The closures are expected to begin as soon as August. So Pope Francis is praising the work of a 16th century missionary who spent most of his vocation proclaiming the gospel in China.
Quello che attira le persone è la testimonianza di coerenza.
In his weekly talk to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father remembered Venerable Matteo Ricci, the Jesuit priest, spent much of his life in Beijing and was known for his love of the Chinese people and for bringing Christianity to the imperial Ming dynasty. He also adopted Chinese clothes and customs, making it easier for him to gain access to parts of the country previously closed to outsiders. The Australian Embassy to the Holy See is hosting a series of events this week highlighting the contributions of Indigenous peoples. Reconciliation Week includes discussions on the first Aboriginal liturgy 50 years ago. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Andreas Tannhauser sat down with the Australian ambassador to the Holy See to find out more.
This year we're celebrating 50 years of relations between the Holy See and Australia. Could you tell us a little bit more? What's the situation of the Church, of the Catholic Church in Australia, and how are the relations with the Holy See?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. 50 years ago, in 1973, our then Prime Minister, Gough Whitlam, decided to establish diplomatic relations with then Pope Paul VI. And over these 50 years, the relationship between Australia and the Holy See has developed considerably. We've had 3 papal visits. We hosted World Youth Day in Sydney in 2008, and we had the canonisation of our first saint, Mary of the Cross MacKillop. So it's been an exciting time for the relationship. It's developed. There's been also some dark chapters, like our Royal Commission on child abuse, but these things have made our relationship into the mature relationship that it is today.
This week you're hosting a so-called Reconciliation Week. It's something that is happening, as I understand, in Australia every year. You've invited an Aboriginal elder, an artist, here for this week as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about the reconciliation process in Australia, also with regard to the Church?
Definitely. So every year in Australia we celebrate Reconciliation Week. It's the same week every year, and it's an opportunity for non-Indigenous Australians and Indigenous Australians to come together and find ways to continue the reconciliation journey, which began in 1967 when we had a referendum to remove discrimination against our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. This has continued over the years, and in 1992 we had a historic landmark decision in our Supreme Court to recognise native title, and that was on the 3rd of June. So that marks the end of our Reconciliation Week. This year, particularly because of our 50th anniversary, we invited this Aboriginal elder who's very well respected and has done a lot to promote reconciliation in Australia through her art and through education, Dr. Miriam Rose Ungumere Bauman, and she comes from a very remote community on the banks of the Daly River in the very central part of Australia. She's travelled for days to be here with us this week, and we're hosting a number of events to really bring her voice to the international stage.
She also met Pope Francis today, and I understand you were with her at this meeting. This seems to be a topic very close also to his heart, reconciliation.
Yes, it's a real priority that we share in our relationship with the Holy See. Pope Francis, like his predecessors, has really extended a hand out to the Indigenous communities around the world and really promotes their voices, their expertise, in order to be able to address some of the challenges as well that we are facing today, for example, like climate change. So Miriam Rose speaks a lot. She's a custodian of traditional knowledge, including through her connection to the land. And today she presented Pope Francis with an image of what she describes finding God in nature, which for her is very much a part of her faith and her spirituality.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for taking time and being with us.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, the month of May has been traditionally dedicated to honoring the Blessed Virgin Mary. The Vatican has been offering a special Marian pilgrimage within St. Peter's Basilica to honor our Blessed Mother. Our colleagues at the Catholic News Agency have provided readers with a virtual tour of the Basilica with 8 images of Our Lady. And for more on this story and other news, visit CatholicNewsAgency.com. We thank you for watching tonight, and remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night, and God bless.